Lieutenant, did they have any card reader?
Yes, they did. We did look at the card reader. The victim's identification was captured on there. For whatever reason, though, the security at the time did not get Mr. Smith. We see Mr. Smith come in the tavern with a group of other individuals. We could not tell based on the video if they were together or not. It appeared as though they were, but it was very difficult to tell. And for whatever reason, the security guy at that time did not use the card reader when Mr. Smith came in. We almost thought maybe there was some kind of conspiracy there, or was there a plan to do some type of robbery at some point during Mr. Smith's time in there? Was there some kind of collaboration between the security? We investigated that, but nothing ever came to light as far as there being a connection between them.
Sarge, did they write a police report or a licensed premise report?
Yeah. My unit received a licensed premise report on that specific incident. Just to give you a little background on this establishment, that location itself has been a tavern for approximately 30 years. The current operator of this establishment has only been in operation since 2012. In 2012, they did also have an armed robbery that occurred. The Common Council only issued them a warning letter for their incidents that happened during 2012. In 2013, they had another armed robbery, and because of their lengthy police report in 2013, the Common Council issued them a 10-day suspension on their licenses. This year, we've had one incident where drugs and a firearm were recovered from the bathroom of the location. They did make an arrest at that location for that. They had an incident where an individual fired shots outside the establishment in retaliation for not being let into the establishment. They did have a fight that occurred where a victim sustained lacerations and a chipped tooth. There was arrest made out of that incident. The actual establishment called us in July for an individual who started causing some problems inside the tavern, and when they were escorting him out, they discovered that he had a firearm on him that they initially missed when they did the pat down to come into the establishment. And now we have this most recent incident. Their current license won't be up for renewal into next June.
So that means that they will continue to operate as a tavern until next June?
They can continue to operate as a tavern. I believe this is an instance where the district of where this establishment is, we need to have communication with the captain there and the city attorney and look into possible revocation of their current license. Based on the facts of these different incidents that have happened, they've had a total of 13 different contacts with police since 2012.
And so in the last year, how many violent offenses have you been called to respond to?
Well, there's been a total of, for this year, there's been 5. 2 of them where we recovered a firearm, not so much as there was, the firearm was used, but we recovered one at the establishment. We did have the shots fired where the individual was refused entry and drove by and fired shots into the air at the location. And then we did have the battery of an individual. So there's probably 2 incidents where there's the actual firearm was used.
Just curious, what is their obligation for outside video? Is it just that they have video inside the establishment or outside? Because is that something that we would be able to address with them?
Well, currently the city ordinance doesn't require them to have, when you open up an establishment, to have video inside of a Class B tavern. But I'll let the city attorney go into more information when we cover different ordinances, now that there's been a substantial amount of incidents involving police contact, that there is an ordinance that does cover us forcing them to have the video.
Right. Their plan of operation listed video, which they've had, but I mean, I'm looking at their record from back in September of 2012. They again had an issue with their cameras not capturing the whole incident, so this isn't the first time they were aware that cameras would be a problem. But a plan of operation is just saying this is what our game plan is going to be. It's not something that we have a citation that goes out for. But this is something that the Sergeant and I and others have talked about, creating some type of an ordinance that we correlate type of activity that should be captured on video violent activity, maybe it's overcapacity issues, or maybe it's selling to underage, stuff that we really need to have on video for you guys to do your investigations. So one of the things that we've talked about is drafting an ordinance that we could do, say, like 3 or more of these activities in about a 1-year period, and we can require them to have cameras. We'll give them some sort of due process, appeal process, and if they qualify, they'd have to have cameras. We certainly would want more than 2 like they have here. We probably want higher quality. It could be a high resolution or a digital. Probably want to require them to have it out for, say, 30, 60 days, something like that. Obviously, if they hold it for 2 days, it doesn't do you a lot of good. And then for licensed premises like the taverns, we could have it cover the entire inside, as well as parking lots, off-street parking, that kind of stuff. I think that would do us a lot of good for investigations, give you an opportunity to require to get the video, and we could require them to give you immediate access to it as well. So when you go in there, somebody's got to know how to get in there, because you don't want to get the excuse of, I don't know the password, the guy who runs the place is on vacation, that kind of stuff. And next thing you know, the investigation goes cold, like some of the problems you had this time. So that's something that our office can look into. You know, we do have our nuisance ordinance, where if you have a certain amount of activity that happens in a certain time period, 3 incidents in a 30-day time period, then the police districts can designate them a nuisance premises, and that requires them to come up with a plan to abate it. And if they don't come up with a plan, then we can start charging them for police services because they're not working with us. I know, officer, you've dealt with the bar. I don't think we've met with them, have we?
We actually did meet with them prior to some of these incidents going on. We met with them prior to December of last year.
Okay, it's been a while.
Right, it's been a while. So, and during that time, we suggested a couple things to them. One was the camera placement inside and outside of the bar. One would be addressing their dress code, which seemed like it was a factor in this one.
Right.
The ID scanner was something that we brought up, and they had it in place. We discussed raising the minimum age requirement to enter the tavern, and the addition of the metal wand detector. They're not required to do anything. These are just suggestions that the tavern can or cannot do. They apparently didn't take any of this into place besides the ID scanner. You mentioned the chronic nuisance designation. The bar was actually deemed a chronic nuisance designation in June of this year due to 3 incidents. One being the December 19th. It was a follow-up regarding a prior shooting, not at the location, but one of the suspects was inside the tavern. 3 suspects were actually taken into custody that day. During the arrest, one of the suspects had cocaine in his possession, but that was recovered inside the tavern. The second one was a tavern check in February of this year. When the officers entered the tavern, they noticed a gentleman run to the bathroom. He was taken into custody. Inside the bathroom was a loaded firearm and suspected ecstasy pills. And then the third was on June 10th at 1:10 in the morning. Officers responded for shots fired complaints. The video on this one actually does depict the suspect discharging a firearm at the tavern after he had left. So that's because of those 3 incidents. They were deemed a chronic nuisance designation. They were required to come up with a plan within 10 days, which they did not do, which is pretty common.
Right.
So the chronic nuisance that you're talking about, is that different than a traditional nuisance? Because isn't it, I thought it was, at least you don't have to include, I thought it was 3 within 30 days?
Sure, there's 2 ways you can meet the chronic nuisance designation. 3 within 30 days, and these are the minor. These are the littering, the barking dog, the noise violation, trespassing. Or there's a more serious way, I guess you could say it. It's 2 violent crime, drug-related crime, prostitution or gambling crimes within a rolling, or firearm, crimes within a rolling year period,
Okay.
which is what they meant. They actually had 3 of them. Okay, go.
So back in, somebody help me here, 2006, 2007, we worked on an ordinance that would require the installation of digital video cameras on the interior and the exterior if there were 3 calls for service within a year period for a violent offense.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly, that's not enough in this case, because there's no digital video cameras on the exterior. There are video cameras on the interior, but they're not quality that is going to be useful for an investigation.
Right.
So are you suggesting then that we should go back to that ordinance, which I believe was 105-91?
Right, we need to spruce it up.
make some changes to it?
Right, I think what happened was, it was a good idea that establishments took advantage of. You only need 2 cameras? Okay, well, I'll stick 2 cameras wherever I want. I just need cameras? Well, it can be analog cameras, I don't care, we can roll film. And so we need to have more current language, and frankly, video that's usable, and that's held for a certain time period, and that's covering the entire premises. So I think it was a good framework, and frankly, for amending ordinances is a lot easier than creating from scratch. So that's what I was referencing before that we're looking at. It'd be nice to make it a little more conducive to the realities of what you deal with. So, you know, scratchy video doesn't do you a lot of good, and it sounds like, you know, from 2 years ago they had that problem. They had videos that didn't do us a lot of good. There was one of the officer reference that apparently was helpful, but then this time around, again, we had cameras. It just wasn't good enough.
And the video that was helpful was from the front door. There was nothing outside to help us on that. And knowing with the new legislation that's happened within the last couple of years with the no smoking ban, we have more people going outside the establishments to smoke. We're having more incidents happening outside the establishments, whether it be robberies, fights. We're not getting those captured. And looking at the history of most of the taverns in the city of Milwaukee, we do have incidents that happen inside the establishments, but a lot of it happens when the problem leaves the establishment, when they get rid of it, whether they kick them out of the establishment or we have people leaving and then continuing on with whatever issues they had. And that's where we really need the cameras outside to capture those incidents.
So this is, although we're seeing it in this case, this is not unique to this particular homicide. It's something that
No.
you all are seeing consistently in other areas of the city, as well as with other types of incidents.
Right?
Yes.